to move on our story and to share with you a lot of the findings around the benefits, the costs, the values of social farming. We're going to hear from Dr. Aisling Moroney. And Aisling has been Policy Officer and Researcher with Social Farming Ireland for almost 5 years. She's from a farming background and has over 25 years' experience in development, research and teaching across the third level, public and community and voluntary sectors. And I think Aisling is absolutely central to the telling of the story and the sharing of the evidence. So, Aisling.
Presentation now will load in a second. Wait and breath. Great, thank you very much. Okay, so I only have a very short period of time here to tell you a little bit about the research findings and that side of things, I suppose. But more to the point, following me there will be a fireside chat, and in that you will hear from people on the ground, who are the most important people, as to their experience of social farming. So nothing I can say in my presentation will convey that as well as the video did, and as the voices of the participants, the frontline service workers, the social farmers will do. All I want to do is give you an overview, really, of our research findings and where we are in terms of the research process within social farming. So we now, at this stage, have, as Brian referenced earlier, we have research and reports spanning 5 years of practice, which are widely available on our website. We have some copies here with us today if anyone wants to get your hands on them. And they really take each sector in turn and give you a greater insight into how social farming works within those sectors. So hopefully they are an ongoing resource for us to have. It is an ongoing journey, the research and policy journey. Some of the key highlights, and I'm not going to go through them in any detail, but I suppose what I want to get across in an overall sense is that we are continually contributing to policy and practice in the work that we're doing in research and on the ground. We are also trying to drive it, I suppose, to a certain extent. We're also trying to keep abreast of it all of the time. It changes all of the time. So it is really important, and in some ways you might say, is this quite a small organisation to have a full-time dedicated policy and research officer? And I suppose because of the level of innovation, because of the multiple sectors we work across, because of the need to keep abreast of so many different developments across different departments, different sectors, the farmers themselves, the participants, it really does need that, particularly in the initial stages, to really make sure that we're doing everything as we should, that as we develop social farming in practice, that we're doing it correctly, and that we're hitting the right notes, that we're meeting the right people. So that's kind of why we need to really be doing that, and we're reaching out in a European context as well. Brian also referenced my work. I'm very keen on always meeting the next generation of professionals, whether occupational therapists or social workers, psychiatric nurses, the people who will be actually making decisions about who gets out to go on farms. So that's a really important part of my work. Probably one of the key things, and what I'm going to talk a bit about today in a little bit more detail, is a major cost-benefit analysis that we undertook collectively as an organisation, with me spearheading it back in late 2019, early 2020, which involved surveys of service providers, detailed interviews with farmers, and really interestingly, and something I would hope to really publish in some detail in the future, is analysis of the logbooks of farmers. Every farmer keeps a farmer logbook, which details what happens on the farm on a given day, what worked well, what didn't work so well, changes they noticed in people, positive changes they noticed in people, and they are a fantastic record of what actually happens on a given day. So there's 4 key themes, as I see it, arising out of that cost-benefit analysis and a lot of the other research work I've been doing in the last few years that I want to speak with you today. And they are mutual benefit, the investment in social farming. I'll focus a fair bit on the value embedded in social farming, and then social farming's place in the broader policy context. I think there can be few initiatives to which the theme of mutual benefit is so applicable. And of course, we always put the participants at the centre of everything. It is always for them. Their needs, supporting them is at the centre of everything. But it is also fair to say that there are other much wider benefits aside from that. But to focus on participants first, I mean, these are some of the statistics that were given to me in that services survey around the improvements people in services observed amongst the people that they work with from having engaged with social farming. So things like an 84% noted, significant improvements in mental health. Another ones to highlight there, new interest, 88%, new friendships and relationships forward, 78%. So a very, very strong advocacy there of the benefits of social farming as observed by people in services. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the participant experience in a little while. And then there's, the benefits to services. And of course, first and foremost, that is that they are able to avail now of an opportunity for people that sparks joy with them, that brings great benefits to them, especially for traditionally hard to reach groups. And one of the groups we might reference here, for instance, would be older males. And any of you who work in services will know that they can be one of those groups that are amongst the most difficult to engage with maybe the typical options that are available to them. And farming just seems to be something that fits very well into people's sense of identity, the idea of going out farming. It's a very comfortable space for people. When other things mightn't be so much. And services are gaining new connections and building their own social capital within local communities. This is a very important one. Nothing beats actually seeing people in action. People can sit across from you and tell you what they're like and what their skills are and what they're good at and what they're not good at. Nothing beats being there on the farm for the service provider to be able to maybe observe people on the farm, but also to get the feedback, that valuable intelligence that comes back from the farmer who has spent 5 or 6 hours with that person and knows exactly the cut of their jib. And and of course that gives you that information that you can then use to make, I suppose, to do other things for that person and organize with that person maybe for could it be further training, it could be ultimately working on a farm, it could be they discover an interest in mechanics, they discover an interest in animals. We've had so many stories, and I could spend the whole day telling you wonderful stories from farms of the initiatives that have happened and the further developments that have happened for people on foot of their social farming experience. A shift in mindset in individual services. I have had many people at the front line of services tell me, finally, I'm able to prove to my management that this is exactly what we need to be doing with people. It's getting people out into the community, doing real things. This is what people want. This is what we need to be supporting. And social farming in some ways proves that. And we just happen to be here talking about social farming, but it could be other things. It could be sailing, it could be hill walking, it could be voluntary work, whatever it is, but it's kind of proving, I suppose, the benefits of this kind of approach, of trying to see what it is that a person really wants and trying to support them to make that happen. And obviously, people's latent capacity and untapped potential. I've often said this before, but I've heard one phrase that I've heard more than any other in all of my dealings with people working in services, and indeed participants themselves, it would be, I never thought he could do that. I never thought she could do that. I never thought they would be able to sit in a room with 4 other people and have fun and laugh and sing, and it really does seem to just unleash something in people. And that would be, I would say, the phrase I've heard the most often, apart from going into farms and you'll have tea. That would probably be the second expression I've heard the most. But the first one would definitely be that. I never thought they could do that. And I just think that's so wonderful to be able to unlock that. And then staff job satisfaction, of course, in seeing the people that you work with, maybe people you've known for years, to see them grow and flourish. I mean, that's a wonderful thing. We all want that in our jobs. And benefits for farmers in rural society too. I'm not going to dwell on those too much, but the sense of personal satisfaction for the farmer, their ability to share their native knowledge of farming, food and nature more widely, of course additional farm income, better use of all of the assets of the farm, the people, the place, the environment, the wider community. And of course we have those statistics there on how it encourages further farm diversification and indeed better succession planning and the idea of having successors. Those are 2 of the major issues we have with agriculture at the moment, is lack of diversification, wedded to the productivist model, and also the lack of maybe planning around succession and lack of availability of successors. So these are really interesting statistics from a wider rural society point of view. So what is the investment in social farming then? And there's 3 core pieces of investment, I suppose, going into social farming that I want to highlight to you, and in no particular order. The first is obviously by individual services or commissioners of social farming placements who are increasingly putting, funding placements themselves from core budgets, staff time and resources, and we are very aware that it is intensive. you know, the support that is needed for people to make it happen. And we are hugely appreciative of the efforts made by the frontline and management, transport to and from farms, and occasionally PPE. Government departments and programmes, Brian has already spoken about some of them, Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine first and foremost in terms of ourselves and Social Farming Ireland, but also Healthy Ireland, Disability Participation and Awareness Fund, Mental Health Grant in 2022 just recently, a SICAP programme and National Lottery funding. And then there's the investment the social farmers are making. Of course, there's their time first and foremost, but there are also the investments they make in the social farm business, and things like the additional farm insurance, the health and safety, changes that they might need to make, consumables, buying things like extra equipment, extra hose, like the wheelbarrows are a particular favourite. A farmer can end up buying like 3 or 4 wheelbarrows because everyone wants to go with the wheelbarrow, which I totally get, by the way. And my children still love to go down to Granny and get a ride in the wheel. Everyone loves a ride in the wheelbarrow. She's not quite able to carry me in it still, but you know, everyone loves that. So they have to buy kind of multiples of things, you know, so that everyone kind of gets a go at things. And then the non-labour inputs, which averages out at roughly $7.33 by our calculations per person per day. So that's things like maybe lunch, tea and coffee, some of our farm activities, heat, light, all of that. So all of these groupings, and of course the participants are investing their time and I suppose taking this chance on it as well. And why is this all happening? And why do people, and services in particular, I know a lot of you who are from services, you know, you are continuing sometimes to really have to push within your own services and make really extra efforts to make this happen. Why are people doing all this? What is so special, I suppose, about social farming? And I see it as, what I want to talk about then is, what is the value embedded in social farming? What are you getting, I suppose, for all of that investment? And I think it goes so much beyond what the farmer, you know, the farmer's time. I think some people might see that, well, you know, if you pay him X euro per hour, whatever, it's so much more than that. First of all, it is the farmer, it's the people, and not just the farmer, of course. Usually it's a collective operation, it's not just one person. Social farmers are above all ordinary people, but they've been trained and mentored by Social Farming Ireland to provide these natural supports to people on their farm. They're doing the ordinary activities, they're constantly adapting to the skills, the interests, to whatever is happening on the farm on that particular day. They bring their skills, their life experience, their wider community and family connections, which often they're using those connections to leverage further opportunities for people. We hear that again, we hear that all of the time. Someone's brother-in-law has a garage, someone is interested in being a panel beater, they introduce someone, you know, we hear of this all of the time, and you can't, it'd be very hard to replicate that in any other way. And 90% do have, it's, you know, it's a husband and wife, it's brother and sister, it's one of our farmers that will be speaking to you today, it's a father and daughter that are involved in it. So there's the wider web of familial and community support. The place and the setting, you saw that in the video. I don't really need to labour the point there, but it's the natural landscape and setting, which is alive. We always talk about the farm, it's a live environment. It rains, it snows, it gets muddy, you get dirty. It's, you know, I think one of the points I really took out of Joanne's thing, we talked about that feeling of being alive. I think we all like to have that feeling, and the farm definitely provides that. The farm sheds, the buildings, the polygons, the machinery and equipment is a big draw for some younger men in particular, not going to lie. All they want, you know, they just want to sit in an enormous tractor and don't necessarily need to drive it, but they just want to sit in it. Big draw for people. Of course, you know, again, the domestic setting, the farm, the farmhouse, the kitchen table, place for the cook and the eat and the chatting, the socialising, the card playing, the singing, all of the things that go on. And the activities then, which again, you'll have got a really good insight from the video, so I won't labour the point there, but you know, you've got your routine farm tasks like the feeding the animals, you've got other things like the power hosing and the weeding and fencing that underpin the smooth running of the farm, and then the activities that focus on the home and the domestic sphere. And then newer special projects, like it could be building a raised bed or a new chicken coop or whatever it is. This is a typical list of activities, and I put typical in inverted commas because every farm is different, but this is from a farmer logbook in the southeast. And if you read through this list, and you won't have time to read everything in it, but you give an idea, this is over the course of one placement block, all of the things, all of the opportunities that people would have had to, you know, the things they would have got a chance to do, the things they would have a chance to try, to experience, to maybe gain skills in, to improve in, things they maybe liked, maybe they didn't like. That's all part of life as well. You know, we always talk about that. It's not about, everything isn't always exactly what people want, but there's learning in that as well. Some things people find tiring, some things they find boring, some things they find very exciting, you know, and so you have to think of all of those things. So I hope you got an idea there. And I said something I really want to do is go back to those logbooks and do a full, because I think they're an amazing source of information about what happens. And then the opportunities for participants. And this is, I suppose, the most important thing of all of the things Brian referenced. You're going to hear the rest of it today. And again, the fun and laughter is one I would pick out nearly as, you know, as one of the most important things, and all of those wonderful benefits that are being delivered to you, to people, and that so many of you know so much about. And I would also say there are the things that cannot be accounted for. If you're looking at a cost-benefit analysis and you're trying to be really, you know, ruthless and strict about something like that, you know, you might think, well, it's only doing this, they're being paid this number of hours, or whatever. But there's so many things that happen on a farm that, you know, are beyond accounting, I suppose. I mean, how do you account, or how do you put a price on someone never having made a cup of tea for themselves and being able to make tea for everyone? You know, how do you put a price on someone feeling they have something to talk about, something to look forward to? You know, those are the things that are just, they're priceless really, aren't they? And yet they happen every day on social farms, and we all have those stories. And as I said, I could literally stand here for the rest of the day and tell you them. So I think we have to bear that in mind when we look at something like a cost-benefit analysis. So the broader policy context then, Brian has already referenced some of this, but we are both contributing to and driving good practice. We see ourselves very much in that space of service reform. And we are part of that story and part of how we argue for that. And those are the statistics as to what services say, how they feel social farming is contributing to all of those goals that are across all of those policies that we're also familiar with, like sharing the vision and new directions. To just spotlight very briefly on mental health, for instance, in terms of the person, what is it achieving? Well, we would say that social farming can be transformative in progressing participants in a recovery journey, and there's certainly examples of that, or ameliorative in providing a therapeutic space of refuge or respite, or both, or in between. And maybe particularly effective in supporting individual recovery. For some people, this might be the thing that makes a difference for them, but it mightn't for others, but for some it really is. And can help them address some of the challenges in the system, which you all know about, of course, around staffing and all of that, and around geographical disparities. This is a really important point, and I know I'm running short on time, but I think it's really important to get this point across, because this applies to so many different services, mental health being one, but others as well. Shifting support towards an upstream service like social farming, if we are to even look strictly in budgetary terms, you're hopefully deferring or avoiding altogether these really expensive interventions that would then have to take place downstream in the acute or crisis response services. So this is really, you know, the kind of interventions that can be made at a relatively early period with people. If you can do things like social farming, and social farming is just one of the things you can do, of course, they make sense also, indeed, from a budgetary perspective. So in that terms, then, you can see strategic investment in social farming as an investment rather than a cost. And it's also of particular relevance, I would say, to some of the other services we work with, like homelessness, people in recovery from addiction, youth at risk. Again, those early interventions can make an enormous difference. Intellectual disability is similar. We would say for some it is fundamental to living a life of their choice. For more, it provides a range of benefits and improvements in quality of life, and of course has a role to play in building people's capacity to live independently and well within their own communities. Personalised budgets should, in the future, help people to choose themselves to avail of social farming supports. But again, the strategic investment is an investment in people and their ability and their potential to live more ordinary, independent, fulfilling and activated lives. So the bottom line then from my presentation, and this is only as you can imagine, this is really a very, very brief synthesis, and any of you want to find out more, just please do contact me. But the bottom line really is that social farming simply works. It works for participants and their families, for support services, and for social farmers. The value embedded, you know, cannot be only counted on a spreadsheet. It is substantial, it is multidimensional, and very crucially, it would be impossible, with the best will in the world, with all the resources in the world, you could never replicate it in an institutional or a clinical context. You simply couldn't. It makes innovative use of an existing set of resources, which is always good. We're not looking at building anything new. It is ultimately cost effective when you think of it in those terms, and provides, I would argue, a significant and a multi-layered return on investment, which again, we come back to that theme of mutual benefit, not just for participants, but also for services and also for rural society. So thank you very much. I can breathe now. And I said I would always be delighted to talk to anyone who wants to find out more. And our website has resources, and more findings will be to come in the coming months and years. And watch this space for the continuing journey. And it's been a great pleasure to speak to you, and it's a great pleasure to do this job and to get to speak to the wonderful and amazing people all involved in social farming, all in the boat together, and the participants probably most of all.